If you want a better tomorrow, start heading for it today. Visit Tony Burke Motors, your local Toyota retailer, and find out how you can lower your emissions and pay less tax than a diesel with Toyota's incredible range of self-charging hybrid cars. There's never been a better time to join the thousands of Galway drivers who've made Toyota the #1 selling car brand in Galway for the 7th consecutive year. Visit tonyburkemotors.ie to search our fantastic selection of approved used cars. Start your electric journey in a Toyota hybrid today. Contact Tony Burke Motors on 480123 or email sales@tonyburkemotors.ie. Toyota, built for a better world.
Hello, welcome along to our first review of the season. We're looking back on Galway's emphatic win over Westmeath on Saturday. I think going into the game, we all would have been fairly happy to see a kind of 10 or 12 point victory, but what transpired was certainly pleasing for everyone watching at home, and for David, I was lucky enough to get going to Cusack Park. But geez, David, the first day of the season, we've seen with what happened up in Belfast, with Antrim overturning Clare, how sticky these sort of fixtures are now. In fairness, going up to Belfast is a different proposition than going to Mullingar for sure. But even comparing to last year, 124, 10 points, Galway beat Westmeath last year. This was superb stuff, and great viewing for you from the box there, no doubt.
Absolutely, yeah. The scores are raining in. I was running out of paper for a finish with all Galway were scoring. But no, you touched on it there, and that's exactly one point I was going to make about Clare up in Belfast today. Like, it's, these type of games can be banana skins at times. Like, you think back to 2019 and Carlow, and we didn't beat them by enough in the championship, and we've had a couple of sticky openers in the past as well. I think there's games there where we might have performed to the best of our ability, but we had all-stars rested. We had Joe Kennings, Davy Burke, Porrick Mannion, Dahi Burke, Adrian Toohey. You had these lads there in the stadium, not even tagged, not even on the subs bench in case they were called upon. So to actually kind of dispatch of Westmeath so comfortably was very, very heartening from a Galway standpoint. They look super sharp. Firstly, the touch for lads that have only been back training 2.5 weeks to 2 to 3 weeks, hugely encouraging. They look in phenomenal shape. I know O'Neill touched it beforehand at the press conference. That's the shape they're in, but it's only when you see them in person. Like, I'd say some of them, they went through strict fitness regimes over the break. There was definitely no lad letting themselves go anyway, munching on Maltesers and popcorn at night or whatever like that. There didn't seem to be any of that going on, which was very, very, very encouraging. Like, they're hungry looking. Like, even there was just so many positives you could take from it, Patrick.
Hungry looking, but not hungry for popcorn and Maltesers, which is good, isn't it? But that was the thing. That was the big thing I took from it, was that they did not look like a team that were only less than 3 weeks back together, both physically in the shape they're in and in how they actually played together. And again, we'll touch on it in a while. There was a fresh look about this team. There was a lot of lads getting a first start in the league, or lads that maybe would have seen a small bit of game time over a year ago in the league that are thrown in again from the start this year. So in that regard, like, it was hugely impressive what they did.
Absolutely, and 5 goals is normally comes with the headline 5-star performance. It's a very easy one in the newspapers to write, but it actually was a 5-star performance. So, like, you can point to Westmeath and their weaknesses as an opposition, and no one is saying they're an elite team or anything like that. Like, they're Joe McDonough standard, but Galway, like, they still had a job to do. Like, you could have went down, you could have been lacking motivation, you could have went through the motions, but there was none of that. Galway were ruthless from start to finish. Even at the end, they were piling on the misery. I think for a finish, every lad was trying to get on the scoreboard. I think Shane Cooney marauded up the field for finish with 2 points after in the second half, should I say, towards the finish. And was you watched Conor Cooney scored 1-5, Evan Nyland scored 13 points, 10 from play. Niall Burke with 1-4. Jarlath Mannion, his first league start would have been, I think I'm nearly sure on that anyway, that it was his first league start for Galway, and to come off with 1-3, and maybe he could have bagged another goal or two if he with the chances that he had, and maybe if the ball stuck to his hand. So absolutely, it was, you touched on their experimental lineup. It was hugely experimental. Like, you had you had Jack Fitz, back in corner back. You had Cahill back out to midfield. You had Evan Nyland at centre forward. You had Mannion in attack, and then you had a whole pile of subs coming on in the second half, which performance didn't drop drastically. The competitive nature maybe went out of it a tiny bit down in the last quarter, but lads they really were pushing on, and that ruthless streak was in them now, which was mighty to see.
Absolutely, and scored 534, 50 shots on the target, so you're converting 39 from 50 there, which is it's what 8%. There's nothing wrong with that, and we'd take that for the rest of the year. That ruthless streak, as you say, was the really pleasing thing, and how they started after the water break. So there was a goal straight after each water break, which obviously was very encouraging. I suppose looking at it, competitive opening quarter as you would have expected, but as you touched on here, it was kind of Whelan's goal was the first one that kind of really, I suppose, changed the momentum of the game. You had the water break thereafter, and then once they came out again, with Galway that started off like a steam train, and once they did, they put the game to bed there and then really.
That's for sure. That second quarter, it was game, set and match. They outscored Westmeath after the water break 2-12 to 4 points. Phenomenal scoring rate in the time frame. Consider there might have been a couple of stoppages and all that. I suppose just touching the first quarter first. Indiscipline really was probably a bit of an issue for Galway. They were conceding a lot of frees, which is one thing that they probably will need to work on. They were the free count. I didn't have it offhand now. It was kind of a rough guesstimate, but I'd say it was 2 or 3 times what Westmeath were conceding at the opposite end, and Niall O'Brien looked fairly sharp on the frees. He'd a fine day on place balls, which kind of kept Westmeath in it. They, as you touched on, Whelan's goal, it was long delivery in from Cahill. Seen it so often. Like cornerback maybe overcommitted and Whelan broke inside. He just had that kind of experience. Kind of poacher lurking in behind, and no one tracked the run. And when he gets the ball in his hand from there, he's never going to miss. So that was the one that broke the spirit for them. But yeah, to leave yourself from there, from 4 points up, from that probably put them 1-7 to 6 points at the first water break. Then to turn that 4 points into an 18-point lead at the second quarter, just phenomenal scoring really. They just took over in all facets. They began bossing in the half back line in particular. I think Aidan Hart had a fine game there at wing back. One of his best games, I think, in quite a while. He had a good year last year as well, but I thought he was outstanding. Finton and probably the opposite end as well. So strong under the drop and ball. You had Shane Cooney. Then maybe at times things where he took a few minutes to adjust to get back up to pace, which is understandable considering these lads had a long layoff. But he grew into the game. I thought he had a fine game at centre back. You couldn't really fault him. His man was probably Kieran Doyle was probably their live wire really in attack, wasn't it? We'll touch on that fine point in a few minutes. But yeah, that's the area to start to take over. Galway lined up the kind of, from my understanding of the formation, it seemed to be 2 men inside. So it was Niall Burke and Jarlath Mannion, with Whelan coming in and coming out himself, and Concannon seemed to interchange. So one of them might come in and come out. They'd be floating in between the 2 lines there. It was probably more of a 4-man half forward line with Evan Nyland given the license to drop out and kind of pick up play from there, and maybe make the centre back maybe track him a small bit because he would punish them anytime he got the shot. But that was kind of the formation. There was no sweeper. It was a standard back 6, 2-man midfield, which Johnny Cohen was kind of he was tracking Davy Glynn, and Cahill Mannion had the freedom at the park. We'll say that's the role that Cahill Mannion is going to absolutely thrive in. If you leave him there, just kind of let him pick up ball, let him pick up pockets of space, float around the field. You saw the damage he can do. I think it was in Kilkenny there a couple of years back in 2019. The damage he can do out around that middle third. It was a phenomenal performance from him, really.
And that's the kind of role that both he and Nyland are going to really excel in, isn't it? Looking at Nyland first, he's never going to be a target man. Even as an inside corner forward, he's not really the kind of fella that you're going to be looking for him to make these runs out the side and spraying the ball into him, because I think playing that sort of a role where he can just be there on the shoulder for if a lad needs to pop out a pass, or there to pick up loose ball, And he doesn't need a lot of room to get a strike off. And when he does get a strike off, in fairness, it usually goes only one place. So for me, I think the role they had him playing in was absolutely tailor-made for him. And equally, Cahill, when you have a willing partner like Johnny Cohen that doesn't mind doing the spade work and the donkey work like that, because you can't have two fellas playing that sort of role that Cahill Mannion does and just be floating around the place. You need somebody there that's always on hand to give your backs a hand out. But I think that was a duo that worked very well together, and like Cahill Mannion's hurling was just so sharp. The stick passes he was putting together, as you say, created 3 of the goals. The pass after was just absolutely unbelievable. Like, if Concannon opened his mouth, it would have gone straight in. Like, it was absolutely brilliant. But like, I see him in full flight like that. He's probably, in my view, anyway, he's nearly the nicest hurler in Ireland to actually watch play the game. Just it all comes so easily to him. I said we're lucky to have him here, anyhow, that's for sure. And even if you could end up with a scenario where it's maybe himself and Pádraig midfield or something like that, it's something. It'd be a serious asset for us going forward, anyhow. But look, not in a bad spot, and there's a brilliant foundation there for O'Neill to build on looking ahead to next week, and whatever team he does go with, they'll be going in confident anyhow, that's for sure. But I suppose looking at it here, Jack Fitzpatrick, first start for him for Galway, only lasted 22 minutes. One of those ones where he was in a position where he's after being booked and was and possibly on a tick, and we're not 100% sure on that. And O'Neill made the decision just to take him off and not risk losing a man at that early stage. And I think it was an understandable decision. And wouldn't have done Jack Fitz any good to get a red card in his first out for Galway as well. So there'll be chances for him again in the future. But I suppose it was smart bit of management there, David, to see that done as well, and just for your own, you have 7 subs there now. It's the scenarios, that sort of scenario. It's the perfect time to use one of them, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I suppose with O'Neill, he was straight over to Jack Fitz when he took him off. He was explaining his decision making as to why, which was a nice thing to see. Sometimes you can see managers there and they kind of fold their arms there, looking on and not acknowledging the player coming off. Because in fairness to Jack Fitz, he was actually unlucky with the first book, and he slipped falling into the tackle, and he was wrong-sided. Then his man was wrong-sided, and he pulled back his leg. So my understanding was, I think he got a tick now. I'm not 100% sure, but I think he had a tick against his name. And the last thing you wanted really was when there's so little game time out there at the moment for lads to adjust ahead of championship and experiment and this, you didn't want to be going down to 14 men, and you're kind of trying to control the game a small bit. Then you can't be as free flowing as you'd like. You can't try adjust with your 15. You kind of have to be a bit more cautious, because it's still vital that you win the game, because at that time the game was still reasonably in the melting pot. Galway, they probably weren't going to lose it, but you didn't want to be coming down the home stretch with Westmeath within touching distance, and then to get a handy goal, we'll say, and put you under pressure straight away. Definitely, I'd agree with you completely. Jack Fitz he'll have plenty more game time. I'd imagine he'll definitely get another start during the league. It's just one of these things, he'd probably be very disappointed in himself. But then you have the manager coming over and explaining it to you why, it's just good management, explaining why, this is the scenario. We're first day out. We don't want to lose a man. We don't want to go down to play 14. We just want to get the points on board. So we've got plenty of options on the bench, and they did have plenty of options on the bench in terms of cornerback. They had Stephen Barrett, they had Declan Cronin, they had who else came on? Darren Morris, TJ Brennan. They had any amount of options in defence. So there will be other games for Jack Fitzpatrick. So that's not no slight on him. And he'd probably be disappointed this week, but he probably learned a lesson in the same time too. This is the level every mistake is likely to be punished. So that's the way it is, and it'll probably drive him on a small bit in training next week, and he'll probably have a point to prove when he does start or get a bit of game time coming down the tracks.
Absolutely, and as you mentioned here, and that second quarter was where the game turned really, and the second goal went in pretty much straight from the restart after the water break, and you could just get the sense there and then that it kind of sucked the life out of Westmeath really, and things just became very easy for Galway thereafter, and it certainly suited forwards. And in fairness, that Niall Burke and Mannion were the two that really did most of the damage in the opening half, and the two man inside line for the most part, as you mentioned. And I think Mannion, like, I think he might have started that game against Westmeath last year. Not 100.
Okay.
He definitely came on or started anyhow. But it was great to see him, get that early chance as well. We created the chance for Concannon. Probably, had that same chance come maybe half an hour later, he nearly would have taken it on himself, having got a bit of confidence up after getting the few scores. But he showed how big a threat he was. In fairness, his finishing was very good. So nothing but positives about him. And certainly you're going to see more of him throughout the league. And be interesting to see now how he makes that step up to the next level when you're playing a top quality team. If you were to go out next week, you could be marking a Richie English or a Sean Finn or something like that, or against Cork, a Niall O'Leary or a Sean Woodnow, something like that. It's a totally different challenge, but he's got a taste of it now. He's proven that he's capable of scoring at that level. So certainly great signs with him going forward, and we'll be hoping to see plenty more of him over the next few days and see how he fares out. Absolutely.
We're beating the drum here for the last while anyway, and how we wanted to see Mannion get a consistent run in the league, because this is the time of year for him. The ground is hard, the ball's likely to bounce up into his hand, and once he gets it in his hand, sure, there's going to be no catching him. I don't care what cornerback you have in the country, he's going to find it hard to keep pace with Mannion. You're dead right with that chance for Brian Concannon. He would have had the shot maybe second half if the roles were reversed. But on his goal, didn't he take it so well? It was a fine finish. You know what I mean? It was a cracking finish. There was no lacking in confidence or composure there. He absolutely rifled the back of the net. Pace wise, he's just phenomenal. That's such a big attribute to have in your arsenal, having that pace and having that acceleration to get away from your men, because that's all you need to maybe get the shot off. That could be the difference, and it's probably something that maybe he is probably the Galway's quickest player in the panel, I'd imagine. No, I haven't seen tests or anything like that, but just from your eyes alone, you'd imagine he would be, because and then 3 points. He worked off limited possession in the second half. He didn't get fed a whole lot. I think he set up another point for Conor Cooney. He scored a point as well in the second half when things came his way. So hugely encouraging. As you said there, it's probably maybe it's not Limerick down the track. Maybe it's Tip the week after he might be getting the run. We don't know, because they probably want to see a lot of lads over the course of this league get as much game time as possible. But you mentioned Niall Burke on the 2-man inside line there. Like he was arguably on maybe Westmeath's best defender in Tommy Doyle. He's a fine fullback. He's probably one of the top fullbacks out there. So to give him a bit of a going over was brilliant to see, because maybe Niall Burke at times, maybe he needs a bit of confidence boost and stuff like that. But he caused them all into problems. When he took his chances, he got them. He was on hand, kind of a poacher's finish to finish off his own goal as well. And then he showed a bit of pace and turn to maybe fire over a couple of scores as well, which was brilliant to see over the course of the game. They looked an interesting duo inside. There was a kind of a large kind of combo there, which kind of worked well together. Bigger tests ahead though, for sure. But we'll be interested to see if they're paired up the next day, or maybe it's against Tip again, or maybe further down the line where we see them.
Absolutely, and I suppose the highlight of that second quarter, despite Galway scoring 2-12 in it, it came from Westmeath and it came from Kieran Doyle. And for me, probably the best point I've seen since that Owen Quigley point for Wexford back, must be 16 or 17 years ago at this stage. Just the skill level and the audacity to even take it on, and I don't know, it was audacity, it was stupidity really to even take it on, because it just made no sense to do. It was just like a lad, I'll have a cut off this, sure. I might as well have a cut. And it came from a hand pass that David didn't give out to him, in case anyone hasn't seen it. He was on the 45 out on the right side of the field. And Glennon popped out the hand pass to him, and instead of catching it, he was on his own, but instead of catching it and throwing it over, he just took a swipe at it off his left, like you'd see in baseball, and it went sailing over the bar. It was absolutely brilliant to watch. One of the few highlights for Westmeath of the game, but certainly it was brilliant to see a piece of skill like that executed to such a degree, David.
a home run, I think they call it in baseball. It was straight and through, right up into the But you just there. I thought, what the hell are you doing? Like, catch the ball. You probably had a second or two to catch the ball and get the shot away, because I think it was Conor Cooney might have been bearing down on him at the time, but he let fly anyway, and it just sailed over the bar. And you were thinking, wow, what a score! But another point of me was thinking, Jesus Christ, if you missed that, I'd have been fit to kill you if I was your manager. What are you doing? It's not something you should ever take on. Like, but it went over. So you look at if nothing else from the game for Westmeath, it ended up on a highlight reel anyway. So it will be probably the score of the year and the first day of the year. So it's no harm to see either. It was a cracking point.
And on Galway, David, something you haven't done. You've probably been in the best position to talk about it, in that you were actually there seeing the players up close. Like, in fairness, O'Neill said it in the press conference last week that lads came back in great nick, but you were particularly impressed with how a lot of lads came back. And even comparing, I suppose, the likes of Niall, and I thought, even looking on the telly now, I thought that Niall had bulked up a bit since last year, and that was definitely noticeable to you. And then lads on the other end of the spectrum, like Conor Cooney and Niall Burke, looking trim and lean, and both shown in their performances too.
They were all looking trim and lean. Yeah, we did touch on that before we came on air. And Nyland is definitely maybe a couple of kg put on it, and it's not the way the couple of kgs I'm carrying since lockdown. It's kgs of muscle. The Maltesers is the popcorn. Yeah, no, it's kgs of muscle. He looked a lot stronger than he did. That game he came on against Limerick, where he did look a bit light. He looked more like a senior inter-county hurler. He didn't appear to look as small. Even if the height isn't there, he seemed to have a bit more strength to him, and he was able to ride a couple of challenges, and he let a one fly at a Westmeath defender when he was coming out of the ball with the hurl too, and your man felt it. So he's definitely a bit of power in them arms at the same time. Yeah. But definitely he's definitely something that maybe Lucas and the management team have obviously identified that to make it at the top level, he probably will need to put on that that couple of pounds, maybe upper body strength, and maybe on the legs as well, just to have that power, and to be able to ride a challenge if someone comes in, so you're not getting absolutely buried. In terms of leanness, Niall Burke, I thought Conor Cooney, Fintan Burke, Aidan Hart, all these lads, they looked in phenomenal shape. I thought they looked primed and ready for championship, and a lot of that probably comes down to we keep hearing about it. Lucas in the strength and conditioning there. He's just, from what I've been hearing, it's just supposed to be everything he says is gospel. He lays out these plans for these lads. He's trying to get them in. A lot of his tasks now will be probably load management over the next few weeks, and he'll be identifying that. He'll be trying to get them primed for championship, maybe. Because looking at it there, I think you could be playing potentially 10, maybe 11 games over the course of the season in just 4 months. So he's going to have to get that balance right. But like the lads, even the lads that came on, they looked in good nick as well. TJ Brennan looked in fine shape. Declan Crone, and there was there was no one on the team that you could say, Jesus, they're carrying a bit of lockdown weight there. There was the conditioning was just phenomenal, and O'Neill was bang on. He wasn't telling us any kind of fibs or anything when he mentioned it. I was just, it's only when you see them in the flesh, and you'll probably see it the next day when you're seeing them yourselves, and everyone else. It's difficult to tell on telly, but when you see them there in person, you can see the conditioning they're in, and it's phenomenal. Westmeath, they're just not that level yet, and it's no disrespect them. It's probably arguably only Limerick are anywhere near Galway's conditioning, maybe Waterford, maybe Tip, that are anywhere near Galway's strength and conditioning wise. But yeah, it's hugely encouraging signs again. Like, it's another positive to take from a brilliant afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me that the ruthless streak that they showed was the real takeaway for me, and that there was, and the goals, racking up the 5 goals. Like, even last year, they comfortably beat Westmeath last year, but there was nothing to take away from that game. You thought, gee, there's something really encouraging from that performance, And again, look, that was obviously Shane Reid's first day in charge, and first day of the season for Galway. But they would have had a full pre-season done out for that starting last year. So to rack up the 5 goals and the variety of the goals and the manner in which they were getting on ball, like Mannion when he's getting on ball, and Concannon, they've only got one thing on their mind all the time, which is brilliant to see. And they're lads that when they get going, they're so hard to stop. And like Concannon obviously got the goal in the second half, had the shot saved for Niall Burke's in the first half, and had another good chance that he blasted over earlier on as well that Mannion set up for him. To have players with that mindset, I suppose it's brilliant to see. And now it's starting to translate on the scoreboard now. 50 shots as we said, 39 converted, 11 different scores, and on a day where like Conor Whelan's first touch was his goal. I don't know, did he really touch the ball again in the first half? He wasn't that Whelan wasn't exactly he wasn't at his best, which is no harm whatsoever because it's late in the year. We need him to be fully firing, and equally Concannon too. He got his goal and a point as well, but he has a lot of improvement in him as well. There's lads outside of that, the likes of Niall Burke put up a big score, Jan Mannion, Conor Cooney with 1-5, most of that coming in the second half. And Ireland obviously with his 13 points. They were the lads you really wanted to see have good games, and they all did, in fairness.
Absolutely, yeah. That's one thing that I kind of took away from it. Like you're going in and you're saying, for Galway to win most games these days, you're going to need big scores from Conor Whelan and Brian Concannon now, because they're two of our most important forwards. But to see the other lads picking up the slack was mightily encouraging. Like Conor Cooney, I thought he was so sharp. I thought some of his shooting was bang on the money. Some at times last year he might have snatched at a couple of those chances, but this time they were straight and true, flying between the posts. I think one score in the first half, he rounded his man, he burned him for pace, and he shot over from distance as well. So Conor Cooney down the home stretch, he seemed to have another gear altogether. That was when he really came into it. Took his goal chance when it presented, made no mistake in the second half either. So as you said, those lads scoring, I think opposite, it was every lad from jersey number 5 up to 15 that scored from play. Yeah. So that's a telling statistic on its own. And as you said, between Whelan got the goal and Concannon scored 1-1, that still leaves 333 between the rest of the lads. That's and that's minus Joe Kenning, that's minus Adrian Toohey, that's minus John Innan, that's minus Pádraig Mannion, that's minus all these players that that are probably nailing, that were probably showings. There's a lot of lads putting up their hands and putting a real, question marks on O'Neill now, and David Ford and Fergal Healy and John Fitzpatrick and all these lads as to options going forward. Very hard to drop a lad now after having performances like that ahead of Limerick. Like, how do you, like, I know you can probably say load management, we're like, we're probably never going to see a forward line when Joe Kenning is fit, that he's probably not going to start, so he's probably going to come back in. But yeah, just lads putting their shoulder to the wheel, picking up the burden of, taking the burden off Whelan and Concannon, showing that, I'm here this year, I'm hungry for start. And that seemed to be a lot of the lads that O'Neill seemed to pick, wasn't it? It seemed to be lads, that probably have a point to prove this year. You have Sean Loftus, you have Garage McInerney, you have Aidan Hart, you have Shane Cooney, you have Fintan Burke, you have Johnny Cohen, maybe outsliding Cathal Mannion, Conor Whelan, and Brian Concannon. Maybe every other position on the field, maybe that starts the last day, is probably up for grabs. So that would probably be the case. You'll have your Dahi coming back in. You'll have your Pádraig Mannion filling in. You'll have Joe Kenning. You'll have your certainties to fill in around them. But there's a lot of jerseys up for grabs there, and a lot of lads that have said, I'm going to fight for my jersey this year, and fantastic to see.
And a couple other takeaways for me, probably that came about by way of how the game unfolded and where lads lined out. You saw Fintan was wing back and stayed wing back for the whole game. There was never a time where he went in and it was tried at full back or anything for any period, despite how the game was going. Equally, Joseph Cooney coming on in the half-hour line would suggest that that's probably where they're looking at him for the year, which, and you touched on the lads that came on at the back, the Darren Morrissey's, TJ Brennan, Declan Crone, and obviously lads to come in like Pádraig Mannion, obviously still to come in there, Adrian Toohey maybe. We're fairly well stacked in that department, and it looks like they're going looking at Joseph Cooney in that further advanced role, which that size in the half-hour line is still probably something that we're looking for a small bit. So for me, that's I think that's where I want to see Joseph Cooney this year is back in his role at right half forward, and equally Fintan now at wing back. looks like fullback isn't going to be a runner, based on that not getting any run there the last day. So I suppose interesting to see how those unfold over the next few weeks. And equally now, when Dahi comes back in, is he going to slap back into fullback? I'd say there's a fair likelihood that is where he's going to go, and he's going to remain for the rest of the year.
I have this kind of inkling. I don't know why, but I've an inkling that they might try him at 6 against Limerick. That's no basis. I haven't heard anything. I just have this kind of feeling that maybe it's tipped that they try him at 6. I think they might try Garage McInerney there and Dahi. Maybe like this is the time to do it now. I'd agree with you. I don't think we'll see Finton as fullback this year now. Just on the evidence, Westmeath was probably the game to maybe give him 20 minutes, half an hour at it if you wanted that. I'd say it's probably the chance now. You'll probably, if you go with him against Limerick, say like the likelihood is probably Keane Lynch is probably going to start at centre forward the next time. So if you trial Dahi at 6 there, you could have that option of maybe he tracks Keane Lynch everywhere. Maybe it just opens up a gap there or something like that. Maybe he just sits and lets Keane Lynch off. Because one thing about Dahi, he would have the engine maybe to put, to stick with Keane Lynch over the course of 70 minutes. There's no doubt from his football background to Corofin, he's got a huge engine there. It might be one to try out maybe the next day. I would like to see it anyway. Now I'm sure the boys won't care what I'm saying, like, but it would be something I'd like to just give it a go. And sure, you know what? If it doesn't work out, we've lost nothing. It's the league now at this point. There's going to be the most you're going to get by the end of the league campaign is you're going to be a giant winner, hypothetically. So it's there's no huge carrot. So now is the time to experiment. I'd imagine Dahi will play the next day. Joe will probably play the next day. Porrick Mannion, if that ankle injury has healed up, will probably play as well. So that would be one. Would you be willing to give it a go, or you kind of mentioned there that you could see Dahi filling back into fullback? Is that how you see it playing out?
No, look, it's just looking at what I think is the best fit for Galway going forward. And for me, Garage Mac at fullback in a summer championship, I'd just be a small bit concerned about, especially when it looks like we're not going to have the cover blanket of the sweeper like we would have had last year. So for me, that's still the best fit. Now, absolutely fully open to seeing Dahi at centre back and giving Garage a good run at fullback in the league, because it is basically a summer league, and we've seen even some of the games today. Now I know it wasn't the summer hurling as such, but such was the wind and that around the grounds. But yes, conditions were excellent for hurling, really. And as it goes on, if you've Garage Mac full back, he's going to get a proper run out of what it's like to be a fullback. Because you saw watching Flanagan in action for Limerick against Tip, the ground he was covering across the line and getting on diagonal ball, that'll really test you out as a fullback. So look at that, absolutely fully open to seeing it trialed for a couple of games in the league, because as you said, there's no loss in doing it. It's all about trying to find what the best fit is for Galway come championship. And for me at the minute, I'd still say it's Dahi at 3. If Dahi turns into a Colossus at 6 and we can have somebody that can do a job at 3, I have no issue with that whatsoever. Look, it's something you're going to see how it unfolds, because there's a lot of hurling to be played and a lot of different lads to be trialled out in different spots, no doubt, over the next few weeks. But one lad who I thought needs to probably sharpen up a small bit was Éanna Murphy in goal, and got caught out rotten and stupidly for the goal. Took the pass from Shane Cooney fine and stepped Niall Mitchell fine, but then had to stay going out to his left and just clear his lines off his left, but turned back a big long wind up and went to clear off his right. And Niall Mitchell had the easiest job of just flicking the ball to himself and tapping into an empty net. Like, that was a criminal mistake for me. And what we're taught as 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds not to bring the ball back across their line, and that's basically what he did. He turned back into the danger area to clear his lines, and he paid the ultimate price for it. And nearly got caught again the second time a few minutes later, and survived on that stage. But just, I don't know, just a small bit lax, I thought, in what he was doing. And maybe it was the way the game was going. He just took his eye off it for a couple of seconds here and there. But like, if you do that in championship against a Kilkenny or a Limerick further down the line, like, that's game over for us, and we can't afford that. So certainly you need to sharpen up a small bit for me anyhow.
For sure, it was. There's no point to call it anything otherwise. It was a criminal mistake. But I suppose in terms of lackness, the game was gone at that point. It wasn't a whole lot to it. He was, even if he did concede, it wasn't going to have the whole impact. But I'd agree with you. Get the ball in your hand, maybe head out towards the corner flag, and then try and get your clearance away from there rather than in front of the goals. And the swing was far too big. Like, it was just one of these that he was taking a puck out, basically. It was that kind of swing. Trying to get spin on the ball, trying to, catch it as maybe put a bit of curl in it, or I don't know. Like, it was just one of these things that he just seemed to lack the awareness of what was actually going on around him. That you probably wouldn't see from a top keeper just with a bit of experience. But times of lessons, it's a great time to make that mistake, isn't it? There's no real consequence. It's the time to make your mistake. He'll probably, that's probably something that's going to be ruled out of his game now coming down the line. You're not going to see him do that again. There's no point. Like, the management will have a word. Concannon, the goalkeeper coach, will definitely be on them probably during the week, and they'll be outlining what not to do. Like, yourselves, like, it's just you shouldn't. You touched it there. It's one of these rookie mistakes, and we probably still think he still hasn't played 10 games for Galway yet between the sticks. So these things will come, but it's not something you want to see from an intercounty goalkeeper either. There's no point beating around the bush. You do need to have that bit of cop on more than anything else, because that's what it was lacking more than anything else. It was just small, bit silly, bit naive to do such a thing. And fully agree. Yeah. Kilkenny, Limerick, Tip, Waterford, Cork, any of these teams, Clare, Antrim, they would punish any team, and that could be the winning and losing of an All Ireland. Not
We're putting Antrim in that bracket now, are we?
They're class team. That's class team. In fairness to them, what a performance today. But we won't even bother touching on that. But yeah, no, just something to improve on. It's always good. Like, you could have walked away and there could have been a game, but no errors, no mistakes. But there's still plenty of work-ons, that favourite word that the management team love to use. So, our management teams, should I say, not the particular Galway one, management teams across the country work on. So that's one of the ones for the week for the goalkeeper anyway.
And for David Glenn, I suppose it was never going to be probably ideal for him to face straight into Galway in his first game for Westmeath, and he certainly would have hoped for a better performance, probably personally and definitely collectively on his debut for Westmeath. He finished with the last point of the game, but apart from that, now a bit of a debut to forget, and it looks like it's going to be a tough campaign for both him and Westmeath, because unlike Laois and Antrim on the other side, I suppose there's no game they can look at and really target now and say, look, we have the win of that game. They're staring down the barrel really for the next 4 or 5 weeks, aren't they?
That's for sure. Jesus, you don't envy them. Like, the games are coming thick and fast. The squad depth, truth be told, probably isn't there now. I know they were missing Angus Clark, and is it Killian Dial as well, isn't it? So they're probably two very influential players, but they're not going to win any games in this. They're likely to get on the hiding of a couple of other double digit beatings. You'd feel for them. Like, is there? I suppose one thing, they probably do want to be playing at this stage. I know it's tough coming off the field afterwards, but this is the level you aspire to be playing at. You're only going to learn your lessons coming through. On David Glennon, I think, looking on at the beforehand, I don't know, was he carrying an injury or something? Because he did go through a fitness test over in the far corner of the field before throwing, a pretty rigorous fitness test. So I don't know if he was carrying injury, and probably one of those games where he's going to be fairly riled up as well, isn't he? There's a lot of pressure on. He was probably a lot of media coverage of him beforehand as well. Was coming back with a point to prove, and a lot of that, it's difficult to deliver on, especially when you're coming up against a side as good as Galway, and they're playing for a team that doesn't have the caliber of player. There's no point beating around the bush. They're not. Like, their good year for them is winning a Joe McDonough this year, or building on last year. He'll be in addition to them, but I suppose it probably got to the stage where he's 29 when he was leaving Galway, probably never nailed down a starting spot. So maybe O'Neill was probably justified at that point to maybe say, it's time now to give your younger lads, maybe that'll be there looking into the future, give them a shot at it. Your Evan Islands and a few more of these lads, your Jam Mannions, and it's probably his time was probably done with Galway. But he's still inter-county with Westmeath now, and they're still playing at a reasonably high level as well. So that'll stand to him, and he will be an addition, down the line for them, because he would be definitely on that view, and still from what he's capable of club hurling, be one of their better players.
No question. And just before we finish up, then I suppose, look, from a Galway perspective, we couldn't have asked for or hoped for any more rating than what they did. Put up a huge score and looked solid in every department, and looked sharp and hungry ahead of the new season. Now it's probably going to be next weekend where you get a bit idea, I suppose, of where we're actually at. Limerick certainly looked a bit off the pace as well on Saturday, so like these teams are all going to improve considerably over the next few weeks. So look, it's a great start to the league, David, and big tests ahead, but they're heading into next weekend now in fairly good fettle.
Yeah, absolutely. You'd be slightly confident next weekend. It's Limerick, but their touch looks so sharp. It's regardless of the opposition, you still have to have your touch sharp. And a couple of Galway's players were just phenomenal. Like Conor Mannion there in midfield. Like, what an orchestrator! Like, you could make the ball sing. Just you touched on it already. Just passing range. That shimmy he has. It's trademark shimmy now. That sidestep he's able to produce when there's a man in front of him, and he just burned them for pace. And he's shooting, just on basically running at 70-80% is phenomenal. Performance from him, if he can deliver a performance similar to that against Limerick, you'll have your heavy hitters that we touched on back. You'll have probably Evan Island likely starting again. Maybe he starts again at centre forward, even if Joe is back. Yeah. Just to give him a run at that. Maybe offer just trying something different. You mentioned Limerick there. I thought Galway's style to play at the weekend. I know it was Westmeath, and you can probably be a bit more adventurous, but I thought it was a lot more nicer on the eye to look at than Limerick. Limerick's was very, I don't know, maybe it's not for the purists. It's a very effective style, and they're brilliant hurlers, and they like to go through the lines, but very much they're carbon copies. The scores basically, Shane Flanagan, I think he scored 3 points, and they were all basically carbon copies of the other ones. Gillan scores the exact same scores every time he's playing as well. They have this system. It's a matter of just trying to figure out how to stop it more than anything else. Whether we'll be doing a preview down the line, so I won't go into it too much. But yeah, the signs are there. You'll have Cathal Mannion red hot form, or Tech in red hot form. Joe to come back, Dahi to come back, Pádraig to come back. Lads like that, you'll give them a real shot. It's it's a level playing field. This lack of preparation and this lack of running leading time to the game. So sure, why not? Why not? We're home in Salt Hill. It's a leveler, if nothing else, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And just before we finish up, then, as you mentioned, we'll be back in a couple of days' time with a preview of the Limerick game, and we'll look ahead to that fully. And again, thanks to our sponsors, Tony Burke Motors, for coming on board for the league. They're sponsoring every show we do in this league, so great to have them on board. And a great start for Galway in the league, and a great start for Galway in the Fantasy Hurling League as well, David. So give us a quick update on that. I think we're leading the way nationally on that front as well.
That's for sure. There's Tommy Larkin's man there, Sean Brogan. Aina Zingers is his team name. He's leading. He's not only leading the Tribe Talk. This is the level we'll tell you now that the Tribe Talk League is at. We have the 1 and 2 in nationally. With Sean Brogan is leading it. He's on 265 points. He had a colossal week, and just narrowly behind him is Colin Keaveney there with Real Merlin Park. I'd say, is it Real Merlin Park or Real Merlin Park? St. Columba's and Rainmore club man. So 264. So he's just 1 point behind him. So the battle for the jerseys hotting up there. We've men from Ballisgreen, Kieran Clark in third, Robert Lally from Skahana in fourth, and Shane Henley from Munter Connacht. I think that's in Cavan. I think that rounds off the Tribe Talk top 5. A few other lads there, notable names. There's I'm down. I'm leading the way in terms of presenters, I think, and stuff like that. I'm 16th. Tony Kelly heading to bed all hall today. Fintan Burke didn't let me down. Evan Island was another one that kind of shot me up there. But our league is highly competitive, Patrick. You're along the way yourself there. Where did you say you're currently standing? I have it here, 44th.
Yeah.
What went wrong?
Inexperience, really. No more than a couple of lads making their debuts over the weekend. It was my fantasy hurling debut, and it probably showed. Happy with how a lot of lads went. Caelan Lyons is an absolute nightmare, and named as a back starting midfield. You think, geez, we're onto a winner here. Lad capable of a score. He missed 1-2, and then he got sent off. So he subtracted 9 points from my total for the weekend. And equally, I didn't have the foresight to check when the next transfer window was, and I now see that there's one on Tuesday. So I left Aaron Gillan and Pádraig Mannion in my team for the weekend, even though they weren't playing. So that was two lads that didn't score for me straight away, including a forward. So that cost me big. But below us, then Chunky made a decent start yesterday. Struggled a bit today, and he's dropped down to, I think he's at 60th out of 70. But further in order is Angus Callanan, who hasn't had the best of starts to life in the Fantasy Hurling League, and he's very nearly bringing up the rear. So, I mean, that's a positive for everyone in the league to take. You're beating two former inter-county stars and club stars of the game. So, look, there's I suppose it's not one on day one, but it can be lost. And for Angus and Junkie, there's a lot of ground to make up over the next few weeks anyhow. But yeah, sure. And I think Sean Brogan saying that he wants Chunky to sign the jersey as well if he holds on to top spot for the next few weeks.
Okay, he was quick off the mark. He sent me a message there. He sent me a DM on Twitter, and he was saying, "Yeah, as we know, that's there's a signed Galway jersey up for first prize, whoever comes top of our league." We've a few of us have a bit of catching up to do. I'd say I won't be getting my hands into the jersey. I'd say Chunky, yourself, and Angus won't either. So, but yeah, he's saying that was his only request. He said he wants all the Galway pennant, but Chunky was the main draw as usual. He wants that signature. You know, it's Portumna got it this year. They handed out, they forked over a few quid. They got the signature, and now Sean Brogan is after the same thing. So maybe he might have to cross his pan with a bit of silver. Chunky doesn't sign too. He won't sign too lightly without. I know we're doing him a disservice, but yeah, no, great to see Tribe Talk is the league there is leading up, and hopefully Galway men is winning it for a finish, and we'll keep the jersey in Galway. We don't want to be seeing that signed Galway jersey. No disrespect to the other boys who might listen in from outside the county parameters, but we want to keep that in Galway at the very least, and you know, let some Galwegian be able to wear it next year or even frame it and keep it as a bit of a memento.
Absolutely. Well, look, great to see that we're setting the standards on the hurling field, on the podcast front, in the Fantasy Hurling League. You know, everywhere you look, it's Galway on top anyhow. So we'll sign off there for our first review show of the year, I should say. As I mentioned, we'll be back in a couple of days' time with the preview of the Limerick game. So stay tuned for that, and we're looking ahead to hopefully another successful weekend for Galway hurling. So thanks for joining us, and we'll chat to you in a couple of days' time.